युगास्यात् साधु युगाध्यायकः What happened? युगास्यात् साधु युगाध्यायकः आशिष्टो बलिष्ठो दृढिष्ठः आशिष्टो बलिष्ठो दृढिष्ठः तस्येयं पृथिवी वित्तस्य पूर्णा स्यात् स एको मानुष आनन्दः ते ये शतं मानुषा आनन्दाः स एको मनुष्य गन्धर्वाणामानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं मनुष्य गन्धर्वाणामानन्दाः स एको देवगन्धर्वाणामानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं देवगन्धर्वाणामानन्दाः स एकः पितॄणां चिरलोकलोकानामानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं पितॄणां चिरलोकलोकानामानन्दः स एकः आजानजानां देवानामानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं आजानजानां देवानामानन्दः स एकः कर्मदेवानां देवानामानन्दः ये कर्मणा देवानपि यन्ति श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ते ये शतं सर्वदेवानां देवानामानन्दाः स एको देवानामानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं देवानां आनन्दाः स एकः इन्द्रस्यानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं इन्द्रस्यानन्दाः स एको बृहस्पतेरानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं बृहस्पतेरानन्दाः स एकः प्रजापतेरानन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य ये ये शतं प्रजापतेरानन्दाः स एको ब्रह्मण आनन्दः श्रोत्रियस्य च कामः तस्य स यश्चायं पुरुषे यश्चासावादित्ये स एकः स य एवं वित् एतमन्नमयमात्मानम् उपसंक्रामति एतं प्राणमयमात्मानम् उपसंक्रामति एतं मनोमयमात्मानम् उपसंक्रामति एतं विज्ञानमयमात्मानम् उपसंक्रामति एतमानन्दमयमात्मानम् उपसंक्रामति तदप्येष श्लोको भवति शोक निवृत्तिः and bhaya निवृत्तिः. These two things we have to remember. Shoka nivritihi, the removal of sorrow. Bhaya nivrittihi, the removal of bhaya. These are the two methods employed by the Upanishad Shastra. Everything that comes under Upanishad, including Bhagavad Gita, which is likened to Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita takes both shoka and bhaya, mostly shoka. And you see that train of dealing with shoka. In the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter, we have that the problem, Bhagavan Krishna delineating the problem of Arjuna. You know, he says that na anushocanti panditaha. The people who know this knowledge do not grieve over what? Things that should not be grieved over. Your problem, Arjuna, is that you are subject to grieving over the finite, which is subject to coming to an end. So if you grieve over the finite, you will be forever grieving. This is what it is. You will be forever grieving because things which are finite will be constantly coming to an end. Correct? So ashocyan annashocastvam. So you are grieving over that which is finite, and there are only two things from Bhagavan Krishna's point of view. What is that? Things that breathe. You know? Things that are still breathing, and things from which the breath has departed. Gatasun, agatasun. Yeah, gatasu, asavaha means the prana, breath, 5 pranas. So the body which is invested with prana is called alive, correct? It's breathing. So when you are crying over that which is stopped breathing, whatever that thing be, you are crying over something that has stopped breathing. There is only two classifications. You are either crying over things that is breathing, or you are crying over things that has stopped breathing. And either way, the jivas, don't cease to surprise even Bhagavan. People cry when something is alive. When will you go? Why are you like a stone around my neck? This is what sometimes people secretly or not so secretly think about, not people in this room, but, in the people in general. This is how they think about elders and in-laws. In-laws are seen as outlaws, and all these things. And then, while the breath is in the person grieves. Because even if you don't have problems with the person being alive, you have problems with how the person is, correct? Why don't you change? In fact, that's an impetus to get married. People marry thinking, I'm going to change this person. And that person remains unchanged and unchangeable also. Yeah. Then the wisdom strikes at the 50th wedding anniversary. I have not been able to change you, and you have not been able to change me. I think we should stop trying. This is great wisdom. So this is what it is. So when the person is alive, you are unable to enjoy them. You are constantly grieving. Crying, why are you behaving like this? Don't you know that I don't like this? And why can't you behave like other spouses in other houses? And why are you behaving like this? And same thing with the children. Why don't you speak 10 languages, Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why are you doing this? And let's say the person departs. Why does the person depart? Because Bhagavan is kind to them and takes them away from the complaining person. Person departs. Leaves. The breath has left the body. then also the surviving person is grieving, correct? While alive, grieving. When the breath has departed, grieving. So this is the only two classifications Bhagavan sees. That from which the breath has departed, that from which the breath is yet to depart. This is how it is. Na anushocanti panditaha. Taking this to be the dharma of everything that is finite, that all that is here comes to an end. All that is an object comes to an end. Anything that I can objectify comes to an end. The pandita, pandaha asyasti, the panditaha. The pandits, meaning the wise ones, do not cry over this. So you see the shoka has been already, as soon as the teaching starts with this. Before that it is just a pep talk. Klaibyam masmagamah partha. Na etatvai upapadyate. This does not befit you. Get up, fight. All these things are pep talk. That's not the teaching. The teaching starts with the word shoka. And then the teaching ends at the end of the 18th chapter. Ma shuchah sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Then ma shuchah, don't grieve. And that first don't grieve and the second don't grieve are the thesis statements of what is to come, the whole Shastra which is unfolded in between. Shoka nivritti, removal of shoka is the gain of Ananda. And what kind of a gain is it? It's a gain. Uma, your mother wants you here. Yeah, sit there. So, it's an as though gain. It's a gained gain. It's a gained gain. It's not something to be gained like an object other than you. All objects that are gained in time are lost in time, correct? And this is what the Upanishads want one to see, that the difference between the subject and the object. The subject is subject to bhaya and subject to sorrow and grief and fear, because one is seeking the timeless in the time bound. The timeless being oneself, this has to be discovered. Therefore, the opening statement of the Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahmavid apnoti param, the ultimate, the timeless is gained upon knowing Brahman. As what? So many things are there to know. If I know this, I'll do this. If I know that, I'll do that. And people want to know things all the time. No. This is to be known nihitam guhayam, as the truth of yourself. Guha is the thick buddhi, endowed with ajnanam, that is the darkness. It is like a cave where even Bhagavan is sitting, you don't see. Why? For the lack of the light of instruction of self-knowledge. You don't see. So the Guru has to become a tour guide and put the flashlight of the Upanishad into the dark, dank buddhi, full of the bats of distraction and the stalactites and stalagmites of doubts, fears, the dampness of depression, everything. So the Upanishad becomes the light that dispels all these things, and it is seen. So basically the gain of Brahman is not a special experience. If it becomes a special experience, every experience being gained in time is lost in time. We are not talking of one more experience, because one more experience is not going to make you wiser. It's going to keep you an experience hunter. We are talking of revealing the nature of the experiencer who is already pre-existing all experiences, the one who interprets and sifts the experiences, the one who learns from the experiences. The nature of the experiencer happens to be Ananda. That is what it is. So, yo veda nihitam guhayam, the one who sees this in the buddhi alone as the truth of oneself. So, shnute, the person gains. What does the person gain? Ashnute. Sarvan kaman saha ashnute. All desires get fulfilled with one stroke. But how to fulfill all desires with one stroke? Supposing I like this, what is that? Chivda, kara shave, and I like ice cream also. Can I mix them and eat? And I can say that all things have been, everything is in one stroke? No? That mixture of all these unsavory items is enough to feel like having a stroke, It's not going to end any desire in one stroke. What does it mean? Again, we have to take it metaphorically. This is an allegory. Because really speaking, every desire is for the infinite, to be discovered as oneself. So when that primal desire, which is masquerading as the desire for objects, is really the desire and the love for the subject, when that is discovered as that timeless truth of oneself, then all desires come to a halt. Oh, this is a problem. Because I like to have desires. And then this is one, objection, court order, stay order. You cannot proceed with this Upanishad further. Why? Because I like to have desires. So this is the person who is honest. And then there are people who are, what is that? Sevaks, say the world seva. They believe in Jagat seva. And what do they say? They say things like, all progress is propelled by desire. And if all desires come to an end, then what happens to the progress? What will happen to all the scientific and technological innovations? Kya ho jayega? We will just go back to the primitive age. Let us go back to the primitive age. We were better off. Yeah. Our ancestors happened to be better socially adjusted without Twitter and Facebook and my face, not my face. What is the other one? MySpace. And all these, these things, picture sharing and this sharing and that sharing and everything, they were happier. They went to bed when the sun, set, and they rose up when the sun rose, they rose up. They were happier. They were not, they were not subject to this kind of misery. How many likes am I having on Facebook? Why nobody is liking me on Facebook? And they have mapped, they have done a scientific study on what happens to the brain. I'm not making stuff up. Sometimes I do, but this is not one of this is not one of those occasions. This came in the paper, honestly, it was a news item, that what happens to certain areas of the brain, when one is on Facebook and that like button keeps lit up. Yeah. So when that like button keeps being pressed by other people, then certain areas of the brains are constantly stimulated and one becomes like Pavlov. You know Pavlov? Yeah, that bell ringing, salivating dog. That is what this Facebook is doing. One is, Pavlov, that Pavlov's dog. Yeah, one becomes like Pavlov's dog, where they conducted an experiment that they would ring the bell and then give food. So then even when there was no food, the bell would ring and it would salivate, thinking that the food will come. It made an inference. So here also we are making wrong inferences. So that somebody is pressing the like on Facebook and that area of approval seeking area in the brain is constantly overstimulated. So much so that one is not, seeking self-approval, which is what this room is, what we are studying in this room. Is that you don't need anybody to like you because you are already likable. So you see, this is a very interesting thing. I found this to be very interesting. It's that overstimulated, that area of the brain which is constantly seeking approval. And then when that area of the brain is overstimulated, the logical corollary of this is that one's self-esteem goes down, becomes a slave to those, to those like button being pressed constantly. This is what it is. One becomes enslaved by this. So who needs this kind of progress? Our ancestors were better off. They did their swadharma, they did their swakarma, they did whatever they could to help other people out. Who needs this kind of progress? Besides, it's not that the desires, stop. It's not that the desires stop. Desire is a blessing. Desire is the blessing of Bhagavan. It's a manifestation of Bhagavan. But there is no pressure to fulfill it. That's the difference. And with those kinds of desires, you can just, change whatever you want to change in the world, because it becomes a Satya Sankalpa, because there is no selfish pressure to fulfill those desires. Those desires are non-binding in nature. You think and it happens. And that's why there is, the desire to attend class, the desire to teach, the desire to transform certain things, whatever you can. They need not stop. The defect behind those desires is the pressure to fulfill them. That stops. That is what Sarvan Kaman Samashnute. And then the Upanishad does a flip. What does it? All this time, what have we been talking about? Brahman. What is this Brahman? It is described with 3 words: Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. We are going to see that. These 3 words describe this Brahman. And then it does a switch. Tasmad va etasmad atmana akashas sambhutah akashad vayuh vayoragnihi agnerapah adbhyah prithvi yathevya oshadhayah oshadhibhyonnam annat purushah. So suddenly it starts talking about Atma as though there is, it's a non sequitur. But really speaking, what are we talking about? The same thing. Atma means I. So the Brahman is immediately switched to the word I, because there is no other Brahman which is not I. I only is Brahman. So this is what the whole thing is. And this, to understand this Brahman means understanding the timeless as oneself and not being under the grip of enslaving desires, letting go of those desires and seeing oneself as totally approvable. This is what this blessing of this teaching is. And so the 3 words, we are going to spend some time over the 3 words that talk about Brahman. First one is what? Satyam. Second is Jnanam. Third is Ananta. These are descriptions of the word Brahman. Definitions, not attributes, not adjectives of Brahman, but definitions of Brahman. Adjectives means what? Please bring me a big, blue, fragrant lily. So many lilies are there, bring me the big one. So many big lilies are there, bring me the blue one. So many big blue lilies are there, bring me the most fragrant one. Vyavartakam Visheshanam. Vyavartakam means the adjective's function is to differentiate between what? Swajatiyebhyah Vishayebhyah Vyavartakam Visheshanam. To distinguish between things of its own class, own species. Tall tree, spotted dog, Dalmatian, Jersey cow. This is within its own class. Out of all the cows, Jersey cow gives most milk. This is how we distinguish. But here, out of all the Brahmans, I want Satyam Brahman. Correct? Yes? Only one Brahman. So how are you going to say Satyam? So clearly this is not an adjective. Out of Achit Brahman, give me Jnanam Brahman, insentient Brahman is there. But I want the sentient Brahman, no. And then finally, out of limited Brahman, give me limitless Brahman, no. So these are clearly not adjectives. Then what are they? Definition. Like the definition of Akasha. Avakasha Pradatra Akasha. That which accommodates is space. What a lovely definition. You can put everything in space, it will keep on expanding and accommodating everything. It will never say, I have no space for you. Correct? That which accommodates is space. Is that an adjective of space? Still thinking? Still deciding? Yes? No? No. The reason why it's not an adjective is because in the next question it will come, how many spaces are there? If you say 2, then I know where the second one is located. So, how many spaces are there? 1. Yeah. There is a 2-legged sign, where the buddhi should have been. So, 1 space alone is there, Ekah akashah, 1 space alone is there, so there is no need to distinguish it from other spaces. So when you talk of room space, it is still it's not an adjective to space. It's a certain way in which the space has as though been delineated. Pot space, room space, hall space, head space, these are all, they are really not adjectives. There's only 1 space, one knows that. When you say pot space, we mean ghata avachinna, akashah. Ghata akashah, when you say pot space, it means that space which is as though conditioned by the name and form called pot. This is the space we are talking about. So when you define space and you say avakasha pradaptra akashah, that which accommodates is space, it is not like saying big blue fragrant lily. Can you see that? What is it like saying? It is like defining what it is. It's like defining akasha. And similarly, since how many Brahmans are there? Since we last counted? 1 and non-dual, correct? Non-dually 1. So then these 3 words are not adjectives. We don't need adjectives when there is only 1. So what do we need? Something that helps us understand. So that word is called definition, and in Sanskrit, so that you can impress your friends after the retreat, the word is what? Lakshana. Yes. Lakshana. You can do this at potlucks. Lakshana. And they say, oh, where have you been? Lakshana means definition. And what is the Lakshana of Lakshana? Sarvebhyah Vishayebhyah Vyavartakam Lakshanam. That which distinguishes it from everything else, not from things of its own class. That is the definition. So Brahman is unlike anything else. It's the only thing of its kind. And so we are defining it by these 3 words which are not adjectival in nature, which are defining characteristics of that which has no character really, that which is free of that. And here we come into some interesting, little hurdles, like an obstacle course. And what is the obstacle course? I told you on the first day, Brahman cannot be talked about. I heard one Swami say this. He was invited by Swamiji, Pujya Swamiji, to give a talk. This was in Rishikesh. What are you studying? We said something, I don't know what we were studying at that time. People said, this is what we are studying. And he said, oh, you are studying about Brahman. Brahman cannot be talked about. Yato vacho nivartante. Speech comes back. Aprapya, having not gained it. Manasasaha, along with a beaten and deadened mind and speech come back. There is nothing to talk. Brahman cannot be talked about. And he proceeded to talk about for 2 hours after saying it cannot be talked about. This is a misconception. In fact, Brahman is the only thing that can be talked about and communicated in its entirety. Nothing else can be talked about. What is sweet? Huh? Let's say one Martian comes, doesn't know anything. And you, being the hospitable Hindu, you say, have one gulab jamun to the Martian, Actually, we are all Martians. They have found out that the seed of life on earth comes from Mars, that's a different discussion, but this is just FYI. And so you can take some other examples, Saturnians or Venusians, somebody. So you offer them gulab jamun because, Atithi Devo Bhava, You say, please have. What is this? It's a sweet. What is sweet? Sweet. You have to do. Because you can't explain sweet. You taste it. Supposing they don't have taste buds, कैसे समझाओगे? How are you going to make them understand? This is the only thing that is communicable by words. Why? Because you already exist, thank God. If you think you don't exist, then please meet me after class. We have to have an urgent discussion. Yeah. Which cannot be put off. You exist and you know you exist. This is what is called self-existent, self-shining, Swatas-Siddha. Something comes to light in either of two ways. Either it is Swatas-Siddha, it should come to light by itself. Or it should be what is called Pramana-Siddha, comes to light with the operation of a means of knowledge. Siddha means established by a means of knowledge. Like even this, flower, established by several means of knowledge. I can touch it. Yes, it is real, it is not plastic. The touch of this flower is the touch of Bhagavan, Ishvara here. And then if it has fragrance, I can enjoy the fragrance. One more means of knowledge, establishing this flower. And then I can look at it and say, this is the pink colored flower. This is the ways to, And if I can hear it, I can make some rustling sounds and put it next to my ear. I can establish the flower in at least three ways. Through sight, through fragrance, through touch. Because the flower is incapable of saying, Aham Pushpam. You correct? It is incapable of saying, I am flower. Stop twirling me around. It shortens my lifespan. Put me in water now. Otherwise it will start making demands. Already we are tired of so many demands. If the inert things also started to make demands, kahan jayenge? Where will we go? Where shall we go? Really? So the flower is what is called Pramana Siddha. Correct? It comes to light because I deem it to exist. I bring it to light. I bring the flower to light. I say this is a flower, and in our common parlance we are going to call it flower. It is commonly understood as flower. Henceforth. Like this if I say. But what about, what brings the flower to light? Eye. What is eye? The eyes. Eyes bring the flower to light. My eyes. But then if there is something wrong with the eyes and I am keeping on rubbing the eyes and I look in the mirror, there is something fallen in the eyes, then who is looking at the eyes? The mind, which is aware that there is a disturbance in sight. But the mind itself, which I thought was the subject, becomes the object. Why? Because I am witness to the various states of the mind, now sad, now sadder than sadder, now afraid, now even more frightened, now frightened of fear. This is the mind, correct? So who is the one who is noticing there is fear? Who is the one who is noticing that this sorrow needs to be removed? Who is that? Oh, that is I. How does the I come to light? We need some special violet light, blue light, yellow light, flashing light. What brings the I to light? That is my question. Nothing is the answer. Oh, but Upanishad brings the I to light. No. Upanishad teaches the nature of the I, which is already lit up, which is called Swatas-Siddha. Itself, it is aware, it is self-aware, and everything becomes an object of it. So it is nothing. When you talk of I, the one that buys into the time shares of the waking, dream and deep sleep states, this I is nothing but awareness, consciousness. So this I is Swatas-Siddha. It doesn't need to be established at all. Thank God, because then only this Brahman can be communicated. Because you already exist. Yes or no? Please say yes quickly. Yes. Yeah, so we can move on. You already exist, correct?
Yes.
Yes? But then don't ask the next question, says every jiva. Are you here? Yes. Who are you? What are you? Oh. How are you? Oh, how much time you got? This is where the problem comes with the next question. First question, okay, I'm fine. Next question, what are you? Son of so-and-so, daughter of so-and-so, mother of so-and-so, father of so-and-so, husband of so-and-so, wife of so-and-so. This tall body dharma, this many awards and I have won mind dharma. Oh, I have nothing to do, I'm an idiot. This is the, what is that? I am a karta. This is the Vijnanamaya dharma. These are the dharmas we keep identifying with those things that are finite as a description of I, really. And that identification is cut off through the communication of Brahman completely without any shesha, any residue. Why? Because it happens to be already you, which cannot be objectified. And here people get depressed. I can objectify even the lowliest of pot, but I cannot objectify myself. So sad. Actually, you need not objectify yourself. Why? It is self-aware, self-evident, self-lit. It need not be objectified and it cannot be objectified. That is what is meant. Yato vacho nivartante, where the words first go with great sahasa, great enthusiasm, the words run and say, I am going to describe Brahman as an object. Then they come back, having beaten a retreat. The mind which is fond of categories wants to put Brahman in a category. That which cannot be categorized, that which is the cause of all categories, if you try to categorize it, that is categorically wrong. So then the mind also comes back, saying, I cannot put this in a category. That is what is meant by Ananta, limitless. Then of course it raises another objection. How can this limited mind know the limitless? People start talking like this. Another spin. How can a limited mind fathom the limitless? It cannot, and it should not. Moreover, it need not, because that which is limitless is already coming to light on its own. It need not wrap the mind around it. There's nothing to wrap. Nowadays all these wrapped things come, burrito type. So this is not Brahman burrito with the mind wrapped around it. No. Ridiculous. So therefore the Upanishad has a very ingenious teaching pedagogy. A method of teaching that brings what this limitlessness is to light, as that one recognizes it as the truth of oneself. How? Using the words one already knows. If you say Brahman is something special and you need some special words, then you need a specialist to decode those special words, correct? Even then you won't understand, and then you will still need a specialist to afterwards to make you feel better. Yeah, mental specialist. Because one is crazy afterwards. So therefore what? So therefore the Upanishad uses the words that one already knows. The first one is Sat, Satyam. Sat means Satta, existence. Every existence that I know is finite. The infinite I keeps cognizing the finite existence of everything in this Jagat. So everything I know is finite. How can I even know the infinite really? What is that concept? So the Upanishad uses the word existence after having removed the time-space matrix from being associated with the word existence. And it does that through the word Ananta, the last word. The last word Ananta qualifies Satyam by removing the perceived notions of this existence being time-bound, because that's the only existence one is familiar with. This time-bound existence alone one knows. So it says, no, Anantam Satyam. That Satyam which is free of the threefold Sankochakas, the threefold constrictors, space-wise, time-wise, object-wise, we saw that. And if one doesn't know this, one is otherwise. That's what it is. So, this is what we have to see, is that this Sat that we are talking about, the one who says, this is my photo from when I was a baby, this is my photo when I was, little, this is my photo in adolescence, this is my photo now, the one who inheres through all the stages of life, through the one who is saying, I am the sleeper, waker, that one is Ananta. That one is that Brahman, that existence in the sense of the abstract word existence. The first word used to describe Brahman, Sat. But then when you use the word existence to things in the Jagat, they suddenly become finite. This flower, the more I hold it, the more it starts to wilt, correct? So Sat, does this flower have Sat? Does this flower exist or not?
Yes.
So when I say flower exists, one way of saying is flower is. Is. Brahman is. Brahman is, flower is. What's the difference?
Flower is Brahman.
Flower is Brahman. Am I correct? But Brahman is not flower. That's the difference. Because there is only one Brahman, correct? So then, if Brahman is Sat, how many Sats are there? One Sat. If that one Sat alone is, everything in this Jagat, Jayate, Gacchati, Jayate, Gacchati, Jayate, Gacchati, is not, is not, is, gone, 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 gone. All the is belong to whom? Brahman. All the ises belong to Ishvara, Brahman. The first two letters of Ishvara in English are
Yes.
I-S. You see, this is a good way of remembering. All the is, anything that is, the is belongs to Brahman, not to the thing itself. Flower is, flower is, flower is, flower is, flower is, wilted flower is. Compost is. A new bush is. A new flower is. That flower gone, another pile of compost is. The is continues, and the name and the form and the word and the meaning to which the is attaches keep shifting. The word and the meaning keep shifting. The is unchanging is. No, but what when you say flower is not? Absence of flower is. Yeah. Absence of flower is. The absence is. I am cognizing the absence. That means I am. Correct? Yeah. In fact, that's why I have said this many times. There is no word for zero in Sanskrit. In Sanskritam, there is no word for zero. The word shunya is not really zero. Pujya, the most worshipful thing. Because when you say 2 minus 2 is nothing. Really, is it nothing? No. Who is the one who is saying it is nothing? Do you exist or not? Yes. That is, that Sat, that Aham, which is Sat, which is Brahman, which is Atma, is very much there. It can never be negated, never be improved upon, never be denied, never. It's that which is the same in all three periods of time and never subject to negation. Abadhitam Sat, Trikale Pitishthatiti Sat. This is Sat. So all is resolved in that which never resolves into anything else. This is what is the meaning of the word Satyam. First word that describes Brahman, which describes you really, Atma. That is Sat. Isn't that beautiful? All is, which are subject to becoming is not. All is become is nots, or in fact they continue as is with a different name and form. And the is that never resolves into is not is Brahman. So flower is Brahman, pot is Brahman, thought is Brahman. Brahman is not flower. But why do you say flower is Brahman but Brahman is not flower? Because if Brahman alone were this flower, then Brahman cannot be Satchidananda, Brahman cannot be Anantam. Anantya Hani. There is a loss of Anantam. Because Brahman becomes one specific thing. No. Brahman lends its existence, Bhava Sadhana, the abstract word existence, to all things without becoming any one thing, Sat. Then the next word, what kind of an existence is it? Is it Chit or Jada? Jada means what? Inert. Inert, what's the opposite of inert? Earth. What's the opposite of inert? Sentient. That is what is the second word. What kind of Sat is it? What kind of existence it is? It is sentient. It is Chetana. It's a conscious existence, consciousness, awareness. So that means everything is consciousness. Yes, consciousness is everything. Everything is consciousness. No problem. Rock also is Chit. Yes, rock is Chit. No, but then why do you say it is Jada? It is Jada from the point of view of the presence or the absence of what is called the subtle body, Sukshma Sharira. But rock is also Satchidananda, you are Satchidananda. The only difference is you can say I rock, the rock cannot. That's the only thing. That's the only difference. No other difference. You can say I rock. Poor rock would like to say I also rock, but it cannot. Why? Because it doesn't have the upakarana, the means of expressing its Satchidananda. Those means are called the subtle body, Sukshma Sarira, Prana, etc. included. It doesn't have Vak, it doesn't have Karmendriya, it doesn't have Jnanendriya, but it is still Satchidananda, it is still Satyam Jnanam Anantam. In fact, it can put your biography to shame. Don't ever tell a rock, I am writing my autobiography. Yeah. It will say, let us see who wins. If it can talk, it would say, I began 12 billion years ago. What is your story? Then you immediately keep quiet. I was a tree, then I was a fossil, then I was an animal. It will have a whole story. Then it will say, let's decide who really rocks. That is what it will say. And so this is, so sentience is the very important way to understand Brahman. Because otherwise you will negate yourself. If you say Brahman is not sentient, that means you are saying I am insentient. Can you say that with a straight face? Try. I am insentient, I am insentient, I am insentient, insentient, I am insentient. The more you say that, the more you are advertising that you are sentient, correct? It's like a child who is hiding behind the couch and says, don't look behind the couch, I am not hiding there. That means it's advertising itself. So the person who keeps saying, I am insentient, I am insentient, I am insentient, declares the sentient. So really there is nothing shunya. Because as soon as you say shunya, shunya reveals that which is not shunya, which is that sentient you. Shunya, the word shunya reveals jnana. So there is nothing called shunya. This is in fact the main parting ways between Buddhism and the Veda, the Vedanta, really. Because you cannot establish shunya, you cannot. You have to give up because you declare yourself, your own presence is there, so that stops you from saying all that is here is emptiness. All that is here is zero. Who is the one declaring that this is zero? Oh, me, I am the hero. Yeah. So as long as there is the hero of this Upanishad, the Jiva, the you, there is no zero. Really. So this is Jnana. This is the sentient, and usually this consciousness is understood from the standpoint of subject, object and means of knowing. Subject of consciousness, I, object of consciousness, part, flower, thought, whatever. And the means of knowledge, which is sight, sound, inference, etc., whatever they are. Usually this consciousness, this jnanam is as it were broken into three, correct? So when I say I am the subject, I differentiate myself from the object of knowledge, subject of knowledge, and then the means of knowledge. Jnata, jneyam, jnanam, this is what it is. But here, the word anantam qualifies jnanam just as it does sat, and it says that which is devoid of these differentiations. That which is devoid of either being the subject or being the object. Ayyo, what are we going to do now? When is lunchtime? When is this going to get over? How are you going to understand this? Subject is that which is, subject is a relative status, we have to understand this. If there is flower, then in relation to the flower I am called subject, correct? And in relation to me, the flower is called what? Object. So if there is no flower, nothing to witness, where is the subject? Where is the knower? If there is nothing to know, where is the knower? The knower, the status, resolves into that jnanam which is impartite. The knower is a product, as it were, a relative status superimposed upon consciousness. The known is a relative status superimposed upon that very consciousness. And when there is nothing to know, there is no knower also. The knower resolves into that consciousness, the known resolves into that consciousness, the means of knowledge also which comes out of that same consciousness resolves into that consciousness. All there is jnana. Do you understand now? Otherwise don't worry, agre spashtam bhavet. Later on it will become clear. Yeah. Because we have a few more classes. Just nod your head and look wise. That's because really speaking, you are understanding it. You are not understanding it in a way you think you should be understanding it. That is the problem. In fact, that's not the problem. You are on the right track. So when I say, do you understand? What are you going to do?
Yes.
Yes. Nod up and down. Bob your head up and down and say, yes, it is very clear. Yes. This is jnana. Yeah, I will ask questions. This is what you will respond. Yeah. Just say yes. Because you are understanding it. You are not understanding it as an object which you are used to understanding everything as an object. You are understanding it as the very subject I, which is not subject to these divisions, and hence the confusion. The so-called confusion, there is no confusion. Do you understand?
Yes.
Like those bobblehead toys, yeah. Keep nodding the head. Yeah. It will go down, slowly percolate. Like filtered coffee, it will go down. It takes time to decoct. Yeah. This is what it is like Madras, coffee, it will go down. You slowly go down. Yeah, that's right. Yes. So, this is what it is. It will slowly go down. We are not used to thinking of things as not an object because everything, the subject is such a difficult status to let go of. One is subject to sorrow, letting go of that even. One is so attached to the status of the subject. But that status is a temporary status. Subject to dissolution, subject to resolution, really. The object is also a temporary status. So the subject-object resolves, leaving only pure, I hate to use this word, but pure consciousness. Because I don't know how else to explain this. Pure consciousness is that Chaitanyam which is anavacchinnam, which is not conditioned by being the knower, which is not conditioned by being the known, which is unconditioned by any conditioning factors. And we are not talking of shampoo and conditioner, not that kind of conditioner. Okay, yeah. Come back, this is a different class. Even though the the implications of what we are studying are hair raising. We are still not talking of that kind of conditioner. So, therefore, this is jnanam. This is anavichinna jnanam, that which is not conditioned by being the subject, object, status of the knower, known, all resolve into that knowledge which does not resolve into anything else, jnanam. What kind of jnanam? Anantam jnanam, limitless knowledge. Knowledge, when you say knowledge, the word to know is a transitive verb, is it not? Correct? Because you cannot say, I know. The next question will be, what do you know? I know. But what do you know? No, I know. What is it that you know? This is called transitive verb. This is 4th grade grammar. We have to recall this sometimes. Whereas I sit intransitive. Nobody asks, what do you sit? You know, what do you sit on is different. But I sit is an intransitive verb. Whereas I eat, I know is a transitive verb. Sakarmaka dhatu. It is begging something to finish itself. But here, that knowledge which has taken the, it is not a verb here. It has where on which the knower is superimposed, as it were. Just like from that same clay, you have, let's say you make, the 3 things out of that same clay. You make a star-shaped thing out of the clay, then you make a little human being out of the clay, a little figure, then you make a tiny pair of binoculars out of that clay. Correct? So the subject, the human being, is using the binoculars, the clay binoculars, the means of knowledge to observe the clay star. Correct? So the star basically, which is the object of knowledge, is what? Is a status which is superimposed upon that clay. Correct? And the stick figure, which is the little human being who is the subject, the knower, is also an akara, a form that is, as it were, superimposed upon the clay. And the means of knowledge, which are these tiny binoculars, are also really superimposed upon that clay alone. Everything comes out and resolves into the clays. The subject is a temporary status in relation to the object and the means of knowledge. And when we look at that knowledge without referencing to the subject or the object, it is jnanam, anantam jnanam, that which is all pervasive. That which even brings the ignorance to light. Look at this jnana. Because when you say, I don't know, what are you really saying? I know that I don't know. This is fantastic. So that knowledge which is not opposed to ignorance, which even brings the ignorance to light, anantam jnanam. Anantam sat, anantam jnanam, and anantam deserves a discussion in its own right. It's not just bringing to light the other 2 words in a special way to make us understand. Anantam jnanam, anantam sat, all right, but anantam in its own light means that which is free of time. That which is ever now. Free of all limitations. Somebody was asking, you were asking, what is freedom? Freedom is, I don't want any limitations. Starts at 13. I don't want mom and dad to tell me what to do. Yeah. That is perceived as a big limitation. And starts at 2-year-old. I want to tie my own shoes. You don't even know how to say shoe. And what is this? You want to tie your own shoes. The mom is tied up in a knot. Come on, get ready. We have to go. No. I have to tie my own shoes. I have to wear my own clothes. This is that seeking of that anantam without knowing the truth of oneself as anantam. This is anantam. Limitless. I don't want any kind of limitation. Whether I bungee cord jump or climb rocks, I should be free. I should defy gravity. That's why there are all these feats called gravity defying feats. I should defy all the laws of the universe. I should be reigning supreme. This is the basic desire that drives every individual. Really. And that basic desire is because one doesn't know one already is limitless. The body is just a superimposition on that limitlessness, so it doesn't, the limitations do not belong really to the body. Body is just 5 elements. Really, everything is limitless. The limitations are superimposed upon this body-mind sense complex. And all this that is here is Brahman alone. This Ananta is the reason why people keep seeking. Because they are searching for this Ananta. But then you call them all, round them up. Like there are certain dogs, I forget what they are. These collies or something. They are called herding dogs, correct? You send some dogs and herd all these people who are seeking the limitless and say, here, we will teach you about limitlessness. They will want to run away. They will not want to sit and listen. Why? Because limitlessness is meaninglessness. Because there is no concept of the fact that they are seeking that. There is no concept. If you ask an average person, what are you seeking? They will not say, I want Ananta. I want limitlessness. What will they say? I want Ananda. I want Ananda, not Ananta. Very interesting. The Upanishad, I'm going to take 5 more minutes. The Upanishad obliges. Why does she oblige? Because she knows that this is where these human beings are. Chodo jane do, let us speak their language. Let us pretend to speak their language so that at least they will understand. So the Upanishad crosses out the word Ananta and replaces it with Ananda. Satyam Jnanam Anantam, but Sat Chit Ananda. Then all the people say, okay, I want Ananda, I want Ananda. Where is Ananda? Where is Ananda? Give me Ananda. Little more Ananda, Ananda, I want Ananda. What is this Ananda? Then everybody comes to sit and listen, because in terms of the human pursuit, one is seeking happiness, joy, Ananda. But then if you ask a few more questions, how long you want to be happy? Who is going to say for 5 minutes? Tell me. No, but 10 minutes you want to be happy? No. Well, how long you want to be happy? Forever. See? Forever. It's like the sugar crystal coming to the sugar guru. Yeah. I want to experience sweetness. I want to experience sweetness. And the sugar guru says, you are sweetness. Yes, I know that. But how to experience it? You are sweetness. But how long should I be sweet? How long to be sweet? How long will I be sweet? You are sweetness all the time. Yeah, but this lady of the house in which I stay, she has no sense of organization. She has put me, a sugar bottle, in between the salt on the one side and chili pepper on the other side. And there is such a thing called sahabasa dosha, meaning sitting next to the chili pepper, will I not become, pungent? Sitting next to the salt, will I not become salty? No. You are sweet all the time. You are sweet all the time. And this is what the sugar crystal has to understand, that, but I can't taste my own sweetness. This is another problem. Everybody else knows I am sweet. Everybody stirs me into their coffee and tea. But I cannot taste my own sweetness. That which you taste, because of which you can taste everything else, is that sweetness alone. That forever that you want is converted to happiness, because that's the only thing one can think of. I want to be happy forever. Sitting next to depressed people, I want to remain happy. Sitting next to angry people, I want to remain happy. I don't want any constricting factors that bring about any kind of a lessening in the happiness. Morning I want to be happy, afternoon I want to be happy, evening I want to be happy, in the dream state I want to be happy. In the waking state, I want to be happy. Notice I'm not saying sleep state. Why? Because one is already happy in the sleep state. In every state, I want to be happy. All the 48 contiguous states and everything, Alaska, Hawaii, wherever I go, I want to be happy. And so this is Ananta, this is Ananda. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. This Brahman, when I know as the truth of myself, this is when I stop seeking. And still one keeps saying, I know this, but then why does the neighbor look happier than me? How can I, become happier than the neighbor? I know this. I know what all you are trying to teach me. The neighbor, just bought a better car, bought one more car, bought one more, some other things. I have remodeled the house and added one extension. Yeah. And built something else. How can I be happier than the neighbor? What is this? There is obviously a comparison which you are denying. This is the human mind. And that is why the Upanishad herself sets up a certain, tabulated version of happiness that we just read, that we will decode in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. What time is the next class? 3:30. 3:30?